I need a cup of coffee.
So that entire sequence, including the audio, was shot entirely on the DJI Osmo, and the cool thing with that is that it's basically just only hard cuts edited together in Final Cut Pro. And I thought I'd show you all the different settings that I used to shoot this, and all of the different techniques that I used, and how you can shoot something similar all by yourself while maintaining a social distance to other people by teleporting around in your own house. First off, I just want to say a huge thank you to DJI for sponsoring this video and sending this bad boy over to me so I can make this video for you guys. And if this is your first time watching me, then you might want to consider hitting that subscribe button, because, you know, that'd be highly appreciated. But, let's get to the shooting and the settings. So the first shot is gonna be like me walking up with the box off the Osmo and then sitting down, looking at the box, and then all of a sudden I'm getting a little bit like a shock, and then I like, and I'm thinking that we're gonna do like 3 different angles of this, so we get a little bit more depth in the storytelling. So I'm trying to shoot this entire sequence at 4K 25 frames per second to get the best quality that we can out of this camera, and it's also gonna allow us to like be able to crop in and crop out slightly if we want to do that. When it comes to the color profile, I'm personally gonna choose D-Cinelike, and the reason for that is that D-Cinelike will give you a way better dynamic range than if you're shooting in the normal picture profile. But when you're shooting in a flat color profile such as D-Cinelike, you also want to try to overexpose your footage to like +07. And the reason for that is because when we jump into the editing process, we can give it that like cinematic look that we want to have when we apply our color grading. But there is one thing that I'm missing in the camera, and that is like having a histogram and an exposure compensation. But that is where this comes in. So connecting a smartphone is basically going to give us like an external display with a couple of different features that we were missing, such as the histogram, the diagonals, the rule of thirds, and the exposure compensation that you can see right here. Okay, so we have the framing and we have the exposure set to +0.7. Perfecto. Just hit record and start acting. That looked great. So now we're just gonna like do the same take from a couple of different angles so that we get a little bit more like interest into the sequence. We're also going to make sure that we set the white balance to a custom value, because if we have it set to auto, then the camera will decide what is going to look the best for the footage that you're shooting. But we don't want that, because we want to control how the footage looks in camera. I'm also going to leave the de-warp function on so that we don't have to de-warp the footage when we jump into the editing process. And format is going to be MP4. So I'm thinking that we're gonna place the camera like somewhere like so, right? And then we're gonna have the cup standing like right here, so that we're focusing the center on me, which is the like main character in the sequence. And then we have the cup on a rule of thirds, and then we have this on the diagonal and the rule of thirds as well. Because by utilizing the foreground, it's gonna make our shot look way more interesting than if we didn't have any foreground in our shot. So let's see how this looks. We got it! It looked good. The main reason that I'm trying to get a couple of different shots of me doing the same thing is because when we jump into the editing process, that is gonna like allow us to make the whole sequence a little bit more interesting, because we have a little bit of different camera angles to choose from, and that will help us with telling the story with a better pace. We're also gonna make sure that the exposure is gonna be set to manual and not auto. And the reason for that is because if you set the exposure to auto, then the camera will adjust the different like exposure on its own, and it's gonna change between the different ISOs and shutters and stuff like that. But when you're shooting like a cinematic looking sequence and wanna have that cinematic look, you wanna control the different exposure settings in the camera. So I'm gonna shoot somewhere between like ISO 200 and ISO 400, but that is gonna be like the range that we're gonna use. And when it comes to the shutter, you wanna try to maintain the 180-degree shutter rule. And that basically means that if you're shooting at 24 or 25 FPS, you wanna have a shutter speed that is gonna be 1/50th of a second to maintain like the best motion blur possible in your footage. I'm thinking that we're gonna place it in the roof as I'm walking to grab a cup of coffee. Yeah, I think that this is gonna look good. So as you can see here, I try to like do the framing as good as I possibly can. So we have the light in the center, and then the chairs are placed on the diagonals. And that is like something that I try to think of whenever I'm setting up a shot, that we're making the shot look interesting with what we got in the frame. Very cool. Okay, so now I'm gonna try to get the teleporting shots, and the fun thing with this is that basically everything is done within the editing. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna snap our finger, and then we're gonna move out of frame, and then we're gonna move back into frame to the place where we want to be, and then we're gonna just do a hard cut between those two, so it's gonna look like I'm teleporting. But I think that this is gonna look really cool. All right, here we go. I think that turned out pretty good, and now I'm thinking that we're gonna like wrap this up with me daydreaming in my office chair, and then looking at the box one more time, and then realizing that it was all a dream, and then bam, snap my fingers, and poof, I'm gone. And now we're just gonna move out of frame once again. So we're gonna spin the chair and move out of frame. All right, so when you're done shooting, then you wanna jump in to Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve or whatever kind of editing program of choice that you have, but I'm personally using Final Cut Pro. The first thing that we wanna do is that we wanna drag our clip to the timeline that we're going to use, and then we're gonna choose the clip and right click and choose detach audio, and then we want to look for small spikes in the audio clip of snapping fingers, so that we can like try to cut it right when we're snapping with our fingers, so that it looks like we're teleporting. Because the reason that this effect works so good is because there's a loud noise when we're doing the hard cut. So we're gonna try to find the first snap somewhere around here, and then we're gonna choose B for the blade tool, and then hold shift so that we cut both pieces that we have on the timeline, the video and the audio. And then we're gonna move forward to where I'm sitting in the office chair and snapping once again, and somewhere around here, and then hold shift and choose A, mark everything, delete, and then we're gonna play this back and see how it looks. That actually works pretty good, and that is basically all that you have to do in the editing process to make this effect look the way that it looks. And if you want to like take it up a notch and make it look even better, then you can add a couple of effects just slightly before the snap happens and slightly after the snap happens. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video and feel that, you know what, I can actually get some cinematic looking footage from my own Osmo right now. And if you like the video, please do give it a thumbs up because it does help a lot. So thank you so much for that. And if you haven't subscribed, that'd be highly appreciated as well. And oh, here's the final result one more time. Oh, I need a cup of coffee. Oh.